Hi all. I wanted to gripe a little bit and talk about all this nonsense about having to upgrade your OS all the time and upgrade your hardware all the time. It made sense years ago, back in the early days of computing. If you look at my video entitled Why I Dumped Microsoft for Linux, I did a little part towards the end. I put my AI Fred on and explained a lot of what we had to go through back then. But back then, things were always slow unless you had top-notch equipment. You were always trying to upgrade to meet the needs because everything went so fast, and microprocessor design really took off. And I had been playing with Linux all these years, and I actually say that one of my favorite operating systems from Microsoft is Windows 7. And if you think about what you're doing today compared to what you did years ago, is it that different? Now, I've had Windows 10 on my main PC, and I upgraded to Windows 11, but I just didn't like where it was going with Microsoft, and I didn't want to have to pay any more out for more hardware when my hardware is sufficient. I have an old AMD A10 7890 processor. I get 16 gigabytes of RAM. I got a AMD video card in there. So it's sufficient for me. So instead of downgrading back to Windows 10, I moved to Linux, which works for me, but it won't work for a lot of people because even though Linux can do a lot of things, for somebody that's used to the Windows world, if you don't understand, there's a lot of fussing and a lot of things to do to get what you're used to working sometimes. So there's some things you can do to sustain your Windows 10 when it runs out. And I'm going to show you things that I've done on my Windows 7 PCs that keep them online and running. There's certain security measures you can take that it'll keep that old system running. I have a couple Windows 7 PCs around here that I screw around with and use, and I'm going to demonstrate on one of the recent ones that I picked up and put 7 on it. Windows 7, if you have an older, even 17-year-old PC, 18-year-old PC, clean back then, if you got 4 gigabytes of RAM, it really runs nice. And you can run all the software that you ran back then, unless you're doing some heavy video editing, or if you're a heavy gamer, then you're going to run into a little bit of issues, but most people don't. They take their PC, they do a little internet cruising, they check their email, they send messages, type something up, take their pictures and download it into their computer, and it's just the average use. And I think Microsoft could really, nothing to say against Linux, but I could think that Microsoft could really kick some butt. But of course, they're going to step on toes of the PC industry. If they took an OS that ran like Windows 7 and updated enough that it's going to run on all the old PCs for a number of years. Now, Windows 10 is good for the newer hardware, and it's going to run a long time. I'd say, with people running hardware like the vintage of what's on my desktop here, there's at least a lot of years left if you're going to run Windows 10, and there's precautions you can take that are similar to what I'm going to show you, what I've done with Windows 7. So I don't want to open up a can of worms, but Linux is not for everyone, because a lot of people don't want to have to fuss around. They don't want to mess around to get things to work. They don't want to have to install Wine and screw around to get your favorite Windows programs working and such. You know, sometimes it's a lot of finagling. Sometimes I find myself searching the net for answers because I want to get something working, a Windows app on my Linux main PC. But I like tinkering around. And a lot of people do not want to do that. And it really bugs me in the forums where you get the Linux users that really diss the Windows users. That's not right. Because a lot of people don't want to get involved with that. They just want to turn it on, just like your car, and drive it, not know what's under the hood. You know, take it to the mechanic occasionally to get a tune-up inspected or oil change or whatever. And I've worked with a lot of PCs from friends and that had a lot of virus crap on them, and it's like, what have you been doing? Where have you been going? Haven't you been paying attention? And all this virus software, come on. I think a lot of it's just not necessary over the years, all this. Windows had pretty good protection. I've never had an issue with using from Windows 7 on what was built in. I've never had an issue, but I do remember my very first virus that I got. My goodness, it was way back in 386 days with a floppy disk. And I had no idea how that virus got on that floppy disk that I had. And it's not like it was in someone else's computer, and I had no idea how it got there, but the old early McAfee software, that took care of it after I figured out I had a problem. And in those days, it would migrate into your computer, then infect other floppy disks, just as things go crazy today. But I fixed friends' PCs that had junk on them, and I think it's just people ought to learn, pay just a little more attention. And I want to show you on this Windows 7 PC of things you can do. And you can apply some of this to Windows 10 if you decide to keep running it and not update to 11 if you don't want to buy a new PC. That's fine. That's all up to you. But let's take a look at this Windows 7 issue. And I really enjoy it. It runs fine. It's smooth. It's fast. All my old software works on it that I'm using pretty much today. Now I do some video editing on my main PC, but actually, most of the editing I do I do it on my phone. I have a neat app that I subscribe to that can do the same thing. I'll mention that in a little bit, the name of it, but it's an Android app. And it's one of the best editing, and it doesn't cost much per year. I think it's like a $6 per year charge of what they charge. And I can actually do everything on there that I can do on my PC. So it's interesting. I don't know. If you guys have your experiences about this, give a yell. Make a comment about it. But let's go look at the Windows 7 PC, what you can do with an old computer to keep it running. And I'm at this point, I'm not worried too much about anything getting in because there are certain precautions and certain things you can do to stop that. No, you're not going to put that computer straight on the internet. You're going to run it through a router. And I'll show you how to check to see if your connections are secure. It's very simple, and you can use it. Now, things that you might not want to do is your banking. Everybody does that on their phone any day. Anyway, I do. I haven't used the banking on my PC for a long time. So, hey, check this out. What I'm going to show you, these tips for Windows 7, and some of this you could apply to Windows 10 if you want to keep on running it. So let's move on to that. So this is a typical Windows 7 desktop here, and I'm going to talk about a few security things with it, things that you can do to keep Windows 7 running. And some of these techniques can be applied to newer systems like Windows 10, Windows 11. But as far as antivirus on Windows 7, I use ClamAV. Now, ClamAV is a Linux-based antivirus. It started out on Linux. And also they made a version for Windows, command line version. But also you can get the Clam Win for the ClamAV. And it is going to be slow. It's not an on-demand scanner. And they do update the virus definition sometimes a couple times a day. But you can choose files and scan a particular, well, I'm not going to do that. It takes a while to load the virus definitions because there's a lot of them. You can scan the whole drive. You can scan particular files. You can also scan your memory for viruses. So it's a nice little program, nice little app. Anything you download, you can scan. Anything that you download off the internet, before you use it, you can scan it with this. So you just have to be a little bit vigilant. Now, what you need to be doing is running things in a sandbox. Now, I have Sandboxing Plus installed on here. Sandboxing Plus is a pretty neat little app. You can go to their web page, and it's an open source application, and the free version does a pretty good job of running your apps in a sandbox. That's all that you need, and you can tell that you have an app running in a sandbox, such as I'm running Firefox ESR right now, and if you move the mouse up, you can see the yellow border appear, so you know you're sandboxed. But it's a nice isolation software, and it works for 32-bit and 64-bit Windows. And of course, the paid versions offer more, more options. But for the basic, this is just fine, and it works fine. To give you an example, say I wanted to download a piece of software. Let's say OrphanView. Let's go over to the website and choose a download. So let's download any version, it doesn't matter, just for demonstration purposes of what you can do with Sandy in your browser. So we're going to go down here. There, it's going to start, and it's going to save it. You can see my download folder has some things in it, but I'm going to click Save. Now, I've downloaded the file, but if I go to my download folder, you're not going to see it because it is sandboxed right now. So if you go to the icon in the taskbar with Sandboxing Plus, open default box, that's what I have running, and choose Recover File. If I choose Recover, it's going to move that file actually into my download folder. Now, say I wanted to scan that folder. I can scan it with clam win first off. I can go down here to the sandbox, go to this PC, the default box, whoops, I want to go to user, click the wrong thing, current user, and there is the download folder. And here we see the orphan view. I would click on it. That's what's in the sandbox. And I could scan selected file, and it would ClamWin would scan that. So that's pretty neat. And if I wanted to send it, like again, recover file, I want to send it to recover. Got to click on it and recover. Now it's already in there because I had downloaded it before, but I'm going to overwrite it. So you know you have a clean file, and ClamAV is it's a pretty fair program. It's just as good as a lot of the others. So that's going to help you out a lot. And another thing that Sandboxing can do, of course in the paid version, is you can actually have on-demand sandboxing of your USB, because that's another thing you need to change in your Windows system so that your autoplay doesn't work. So that when you plug in a USB stick, it doesn't autoplay. That's how a lot of viruses and malware get into your computer. But as far as security on the internet goes, that's what we're talking about. There are a few things you can check your system with. There's a known vulnerability scanner over here at safetydetectives.com vulnerability tool. And if you have any vulnerabilities, they found 0 that it can find from the internet on your PC, it'll show up. So what is the database? It is the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, or the CVE database, and it's the world's largest database of cybersecurity vulnerabilities. So when you run this, it does a pretty good, fair job of saying, hey, we can't access any vulnerabilities on your PC from the internet. So that's a good thing. The next thing you can do to check is you can go over to Gibson Research. Now Gibson Research, Steve Gibson, he's a pretty sharp guy. He's been around for a number of years, and he's most famous for his SpinRite hard drive recovery software. I've had that. I've used it. It's got me out of trouble. I've used it to repair computers at work and computers at home that people have brought me to recover hard drive. But if you go to his services menu and you click the shields up, it's going to take us to a page the first piece of information it's going to give us is my connection has no reverse DNS. If you have no reverse DNS, then there's a lot of information that can't be harvested from your IP address. So that's what you want. You want your connection to have no reverse DNS. So the next thing we're going to do is click Proceed. And there's a couple options here on the page here. First, we're going to look at file sharing. Did you know you have a hidden internet server within your PC? That can be attacked. And internet port 139 doesn't appear to exist on this PC, which is good. That means it's running in stealth mode. It's my PC hasn't responded, and it's also unable to connect with the NetBIOS on my computer, which is the internal networking protocol over the internet, so it's not exposed. That's a good thing on this PC, so you want to see that also. So the next thing you might want to check is all the service ports. Now what happens here, there are malicious hackers out there, of course, and they have these port scanners that go pinging for open ports and service ports on PCs where they can possibly access and inject things in, inject malware in, inject viruses in. So what you want is a stealth computer so they don't even see you. That's a plus. So you're going to check all service ports. And if there's an open one, it's red. That's not good. Closed is blue, but it's also being seen on the internet. And green is completely stealth. So they check, Steve's software checks your 1056 ports. So 1056 ports are being checked on this PC. It takes a minute as it's scanning and looking for open ports or even closed ports, which a closed port can be attacked. There are ways, all kind of ways that they have to get into your PC. Those guys are sneaky. So we get down and it's done, and this PC has passed true stealth analysis. So I received a true stealth rating on here. Not a single packet from any pings, echo requests have left my computer. So any passing probes from hackers, as far as they're concerned, this machine doesn't exist on the internet. They can't see it. That's a good thing. That's another way you can check to see how secure your old Windows 7 computer is, and you can use this on your newer PCs too also. But that's a function of your firewall. The firewall on your PC, the firewall on your router has to be set up right to do this. And if you do have an open or even a closed port, you can click on the port number that it is, and a page will open and it'll give you a little information about that port and what it's used for, so possibly that you can close that port. So these are just a few things you can do to keep your old Windows 7 computer safe. As I say, you can sandbox anything. Sandbox your browser. You can sandbox your email client. So if you did click on anything malicious accidentally in your email, well, it's not going to get into your computer, because when you exit the program, all that information in the sandbox disappears. It goes away. So that's just a couple things you can do to secure your system and happily use an old Windows-based PC on the internet. As I said, Windows XP was one of my favorites. And you got to understand that a lot of people get mad because of all the changes in Windows, especially Windows 11, what's coming down the pike. But you got to understand, Windows is geared towards business. I mean, I worked for a long time in a healthcare system, most of my life. And, you know, everything was Windows based, all the tools that were used. So there's a lot of money being made by Microsoft. And I don't know what the ratio is between the software that they sell to the OEM computer producers. But boy, wouldn't it be nice if they just came out with a system designed for us, like it used to be. Everybody used to complain about Windows ME, but that's because everybody was so used to DOS back in the days that they didn't like how Windows ME worked because you couldn't access DOS anymore. But it was going towards the new, and Windows 2000, that was the first one really geared towards business. And they combined both in when XP came out, and it was a nice system. The XP was nice, and then the 7 was better. So if you have any questions, any comments, any suggestions, anything, hey, give a yell. What's your experience with your old OS systems on Windows? And actually on this PC I have a dual boot on it. I have Puppy Linux installed in a Frugal in case I need to use a Linux on here. So it's just fun to use for screwing around. And yeah, you guys have a good day and God bless.